Let's talk about private resources today. Well, we're going to talk about the configuration and we're also going to talk about how to make sure that when some user is trying to access this private resource, that user is authenticated, that user is authorized to access this private resource. But before that, let me tell you what this private resource is. This private resource could be your application, it could be a network or subnet that's not available to the outside world. It's available inside your company network. And you need to make sure that all the security is in place. And how do you do that? Using the awesome Cisco Secure Access. We're going to talk about two ways. We're going to talk about client-based access to your private resources, or we're going to talk about client-less as well in today's video. And we're going to talk about configuration of both of these ways, client-based as well as client-less. But let me just tell you that with client-based, you need to install a piece of software on the end user's computer to make sure that they're able to connect to the private resource using the client-based connection. Also, user provisioning is extremely important for this. So you need to make sure that you know how to provision users, and that should already be done. And if that's not already done, please go ahead and watch my second video in this series in which I've covered the user provisioning in all the three ways, the manual way using Azure as well as using Active Directory. And let's jump right into the agenda. Okay, so these are the steps we're going to take. So the first thing we're going to do is create a tunnel group on the Cisco Secure Access dashboard. And on the GUI, this is where you do it. And then we're going to go ahead and configure the other side of the tunnel. In this case, I'm doing it on the Cisco ASA. I'm going to show you how I did it and what are the configurations I've done on my Cisco ASA. Then we're going to go ahead and configure the private application on the dashboard, which you can configure from here, GUI resources and then private resources. Then we're going to go ahead and create the access policy where we go ahead and allow or block access based on a number of factors. And this is where you find it on the GUI. Then we're going to go for a client-based first, and then we're going to go for client-less. In client-based, we need to download and install Cisco Secure Access Client on the end user's machine. You can find this software from software.cisco.com. You can search for maybe any Connect or Secure Client, and you can get it from there. Then we're going to go ahead and enroll this user, and after the enrollment is complete, we're going to go ahead and access the private applications. I'm going to show you what happens if it fails, the logs and other things. And then once we're done with that, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to configure access to private applications using clientless Zero Trust, the configuration and the demo, how to connect and what happens, the logs and so on. In case you're using FQDN to connect to your private application, in that case, we're going to go ahead and configure your private or your internal DNS IP address in the Cisco Secure Access dashboard. If in case you're not using FQDNs, then it should not be a problem. But if you are, yes, you'll need to do that. I'm going to show you how to do that as well. So let's jump to the GUI. All right, so here we are on the dashboard of the Cisco Secure Access. So if you're not familiar with it, I would highly recommend going through the first video of the series where I've explained all these components. So on the left side, we'll go to Connect and then click on Network Connections. Okay, so this is the page we land on, the connector groups. These are not available at the moment. These are coming soon. So if you even hover over this option of add a connector group, you'll see coming soon. These are not available. If I go ahead and click on network tunnel groups, it gives you an overview right here of how things are looking. It tells you that in terms of the network tunnel groups, there are 0 disconnected, 0 warnings, and 1 connected. So your network tunnel group, which you see right here, as I've named it DMZ, ASA, Tunnel, and C, it consists of 2 tunnels. The primary tunnel, as you can see here, and then the secondary tunnel as well. It gives you further information on this page as well, like the status region and so on. So we have tunnel groups in order to make sure that we have redundancy and high availability, right? So let's go ahead and see how I've configured this network tunnel group. Okay, so let me just go ahead and clear the screen. All right, let me give you a quick tour of the network tunnel group that I've created, which is DMZ ASA Tunnel NC. You see all the options here, the summary and everything. The summary says that it gives you information about the region, the device type, the routing, and a lot of these options that you see on this page are configurable. So you talk about the primary hub. It says the primary hub is up, and then you take a look at the secondary hub, which also shows up as the hub is up. It gives you the tunnel ID information. It gives you the data center and the IP address. This is the IP address from the secure access end, which is these are two different IP addresses. The IP address you see here is not the IP address you see here. These are two different IP addresses. The tunnel group IDs also differ between the primary hub and the secondary hub. Now, these IP addresses that you see for the primary and the primary and the secondary, you see here as well, right? And the spear device IP address is the IP address of the other side of the tunnel. In this case, I'm using the ASA and the same IP address from the ASA end. Right? It gives you other pieces of information as well, the status, last status update as well, the peer ID, and the tunnels, obviously. So let me just go ahead and show you how to create a tunnel. Test one, we're then going to ignore it. I just want to show you the steps. So let's go ahead and do it. All right, so here we are back at the network tunnel groups page, and I'm interested in adding a new tunnel group just for showing you an example of how it looks. So I'll click on the add button, and I'm going to give it a name now. Okay, test, and I'm going to select a region which says Asia Pacific, Singapore, the device type ASA, because that's what I'm using. You got other options as well, as you can see. So click on next, and then the tunnel ID. So I got two options, email or IP address. So I'll go for email. So the network Viking, and I give it a passphrase, which is Cisco. Let's say 12345, 12345, 67. All right, it has to be between 16 and 64 characters long, and you cannot use any special characters, so you got to be very careful there. Cisco 12345, 1234567. Okay, we're good. So I'll click on next, and then here we have an option to configure static routing or dynamic routing to reach out to the resources that we're interested in. So basically giving address ranges used internally by your organization. This is the option, the static routing we saw under summary, right? Just a couple minutes back, I believe. Okay, so just for the sake of this example, I'm going to say 1.1.1.1, and then go ahead and click on add, and then click on save. All right, so here it's going to show us the summary of all the details we need to enter in the ASA. Go ahead and make a copy of all these details because these are going to be used to set up the other side of the tunnels, the primary and as well as the secondary. So you can make individual copies of it just by clicking on this button right here, or you can just download the CSV and be done with it. Then go ahead and click on done, and that's it. So let's just go ahead and check out the other side of the configuration, which would be the ASA. Let's go. All right, so this is the ASA side of the configuration. This is the first piece of configuration you need to go for. The second one, the third one, and then this one's the fourth one, right? You see PBR is not mentioned here because I just skipped that. In case you have to configure PBR as well, you can do so by following the steps mentioned in the user guide, just 5 to 6 lines of configuration, that's it. I'm going to put in a link in the description for you, so don't worry about that. All right, so the first thing is configuring the IKEv2 policy. So you configure the IKEv policy like this, and then you go ahead and enable it on the outside interface, right? The second thing to do is to configure a group policy and then tunnel group parameters. So this is the group policy configuration, the first three that you see there, and then you have the tunnel group configuration. For the tunnel group configuration, you'll have to do it twice because first time you'll do it for the primary tunnel and then you'll do it for the secondary tunnel. So you'll have to repeat all these. And then the passphrase that we saw in the last section where we configured the secure access side of the configuration. All right, so yeah, as I mentioned, you'll have to do it for primary as well as secondary. So for example, tunnel group, as you see right here, tunnel group, the IP address for the primary, and then you'll have to do again the primary IP address here as well, and then mention the primary IP address here as well, and get it done. Then again, you'll have to configure these things again with the secondary IP address, secondary IP address, and secondary IP address, and so on, right? So pretty much that's it. Then you go to number 3, configure IPsec proposal and IPsec profile. IPsec proposal does not need to be configured twice. Like for the primary tunnel as well as the secondary tunnel, you can use the same one for both if you want to use the same one for both. If you don't want them to, for example, use the same encryption, integrity, and so on, then you can just go ahead and change those things in the tunnels accordingly. Well, there are a set of parameters that IPsec supports for you to be able to go ahead and configure it correctly. I'm going to put in a link in the description for that as well, where you can just compare what's supported and what's not, what are the parameters that are supported and so on, right? So that won't be a problem. Okay, then you got to configure the crypto IPsec profile that you see right here, again, for both the primary as well as the secondary tunnel, because the email ID differs for the primary as well as the secondary tunnel. Let's say, for example, this is the primary tunnel's email ID, then you got to change it to, this is just a dummy email address, right? So you can just, do the same. You have to do the same thing for the secondary tunnel as well. And the last step, which is number 4, VTI, the virtual tunnel interface, you'll have to do it for the primary as well as the secondary. So let's say interface tunnel 1 for the primary, you'll have to create another one, for example, interface tunnel 11 for the secondary tunnel. And just to answer this particular part here, name if VTI IP address. This particular IP address, you see this value here, x.x.x.1. Just replace this sample IP with any non-existing IP address that's not being used for a VLAN subnet or existing VLAN connection in your network, right? All right, you can verify using these two commands. You can do the IKEv detail, and for the IPsec as well, you'll get a lot of information from there. You'll get the SPI and number, you get the status, you get the packets and caps, decaps, you get the role as well. So a lot of information there in these two commands. And then you have the testing using the packet tracer command, the inside IP address and specific destination IP address, the port numbers, and so on. So what this packet tracer command does is that it simulates basically a packet from the inside interface with the specific source IP and port, and then the specific destination IP and port. And that's pretty much it. And whatever response you get, it would indicate whether the packet flows through the tunnel or not. So yeah. All right, so we're done with the first one. We're done with the second one. So the tunnel has been established on both the ends. The configuration is done. Now we're going to go ahead and create the private application in the Cisco Secure Access dashboard. Let's go ahead and do that. All right, so let's go ahead and configure the private application. For that, I need to go to the left side, resources, and then the very first option from the list, we get private resources. Click on that. On private resources here, we have two options. We have the private resources and we have the private resource groups. I have one group configured. I'm going to show that to you in a separate video, but for now, let's concentrate on private resources or private application in this case, which is Cafe Kashmir private resource group, cafes in Kashmir. This is the group. I just made it a part of that. I was just testing something. Anyways, I'm going to talk about it in a separate video. Then the connection method. This one's client-based that I informed you about. So basically, we're going to be using a client, in this case, software on the end user's machine to go ahead and access this resource, accessed by 0, and then rules 2. It's a part of 2 rules and total requests 0. And this is the data in the last 24 hours. Okay. So I can just click on Cafe Kashmir and get an overview here on the right side of the screen, or I can just click on these 3 dots and click on Edit and show you how it looks like. So let me just go ahead and click on Edit. All right. So you have the private resource name here, Cafe Kashmir. The description is optional, and then specify one or more addresses that will be used for communication between this resource and secure access. Secure access will route traffic to this address. Well, basically the communication with the secure access cloud, right? This is the IP address where I've hosted this website. I don't have to necessarily mention two entries in here. However, I was testing if I'll be able to access the website using an IP address and then the FQDN as well. And that I'm using an FQDN means that I need to use an internal DNS server's IP address as well to resolve this FQDN, right? Otherwise, I won't be able to reach this FQDN. Then you have the protocol and you have the port slash ranges as well. Okay, so if I was to show you this configuration here, all right, so I've selected this option of use internal DNS server to resolve the domain, and I've selected my internal DNS server. I wouldn't be able to select my internal DNS server if I've not already added this DNS server's IP address in my secure access. So how do I do that? I can go ahead to connect on the left side and then go to end user connectivity. And then once you land on that page on the right hand side, top right corner, you'll find an option to which says something like manage DNS servers. So you'll have to add the DNS server there, and only then you'll be able to see, the IP address of your DNS server here. The other entry that I have is for umbrella. Well, that won't be able to resolve this FQDN of cafe.tnv.com, and therefore it's this way, right? Okay, now okay, the other option after that is zero touch connections. I've selected that because that's what we're testing right now. And then I have the client-based connection. After this, I'm going to show you clientless, which is this one, browser-based connection. Now, this part of the setting, it explains it right here. Specify the ways end user, specify the ways user endpoints can reach this resource. Later access rules will determine which users and devices can access the resource, right? So this is how the end users are going to go ahead and reach out to this private resource. Okay, so this is all. You mentioned the IP address here, you mentioned the FQD, and it's completely your choice. I can go ahead and remove it again. I can just use one entry, which is this one, and that's it, be done with it. Okay, now that's it. The rest of the things I just, I didn't really select anything in here and just went ahead and clicked on save, and that's it. All right. All right, so we're done with this. Let's go ahead and configure the access policy now. Go to Secure and Access Policy, click on the access policy. Okay, so this is the page we land on, and we see a ton of stuff in here. Let's talk about these options. So if you want to move the rules from, let's say, rule number 1 to position number 2 or position number 3, right? You can do that using these 6 dots. Just click on it and drag it to second position if you want to, or to the third position, and vice versa. You can drag rule number 3 as well and rule number 2 as well accordingly. If you want to go ahead and delete a rule, you can go ahead and check this box, and then you'll get an option to delete the rule somewhere right here. Let me just show that to you as well. So let's say I check the first one. It shows you delete on the right-hand side right here. So you can go ahead and do that, or you can go ahead and select all 3 of them this way. Let me just show it to you real quick. Okay, like this. You just go ahead and click on that, and that's it. You'll get the delete option for all of them. Let's not do that for now. Okay. Then we have the numbering, number 1, number 2, and then number 3. So the rules in Cisco Secure Access policy are executed in this order. So the first one will be checked against so the traffic that is coming in, right? That will be checked against rule number 1. If rule number 1 does not match, then the traffic will be checked against rule number 2. If that matches, then rule number 3 and the rules after that will not be checked. Rule number two will be executed in that case. Let's say rule number 1 does not match, rule number 2 does not match, and rule number 3 does not match. Then in that case, it's going to fall down to the default access rules. right? Then we have the rule names, Cafe Kashmir, that is uh, um, the application we're looking into right now. We have Cafe Kashmir Clientless, and then the third one named as tenant block. You can name them whatever you want. It's completely your choice. Then it shows the access. The first one it shows as private because it's a private application, then private again, and the third access is internet based. Now, you have an option to select private or internet based. As you can see right here under this button, add rule, you'll find these options. So if I click on add rule, you'll see two options in there, private access and internet access. The first two in this case that I've made are private, and the third one is internet access, right? So that's how you do it, and that's where you select it while adding the rule itself. All right, so you have the column action where you can have allow or blocked. In this case, you see allow for all the three rules. I'll show you where to configure that. You have the column sources where you see any for all the three rules. I'll show you where to configure this. It was none before for the first rule. I changed it quickly to any. I'm going to show you how to configure that. And then you have the destinations column where you have Cafe Kashmir, basically the destinations that someone's trying to reach, the destination that someone that is the source that they are trying to reach. So the source could be any or any specific user that we mentioned that you should see under this column, right? Trying to reach out to a certain destination that you would see right here. I'll show you where to configure that. And then you have the security column where, let's say, for example, if you had IPS enabled, you would see IPS mentioned right here. And then same goes for this one as well. You don't see anything here. If, let's say, I enable IPS, for example, then you'll see IPS mentioned here. And then you see web and tenant here because I've enabled those functions, those security functions in here. Then you have the status. This implies that this rule is enabled. So you see all the three rules are enabled. In case you go ahead and disable it, you'll see a different kind of status for that particular rule. So if I just go ahead and disable the rule, the first one, you'll find that under status, it changes to gray, right? You see it changed to gray, and now it's disabled, and therefore any traffic coming in will not hit this rule, right? So let's check out the first rule, but let me first go ahead and enable it. All right. All right. Let's edit the first rule and check out how I've configured it. Okay, so let's edit it. Okay, let it load. There you go. All right, so here we have the rule name at the top, Cafe Kashmir. If you want to go ahead and disable or enable the rule, this is where you do it. And then on the right-hand side, you have the logging. If the logging is enabled or disabled, you'll see it right here. If you want to change it, you can click on Edit and then change it accordingly. Then we have the summary of this rule. And then after that, this is where we give this rule a name. In this case, I've named it Cafe Kashmir. And then you have the rule order, which is of very, very high importance. So in this case, it's one. I can click on this drop down and change it to 2 or 3 and so on. Now, after that, we talk about the specify access, in which the first option is the action. What action do you want it to take? You want to allow or block. In this case, it's allow. The allow option is selected. Allow specified traffic if security requirements are met. I cannot go ahead and change it to blocked. So when you click on edit for any rule, you do not have the option of changing the allow action to block. However, I believe this is being worked on, and you will have this option soon. And then you have the from, where you select the source for this particular rule. In this case, it's any. I can click on this section and change it to whatever options are available. And then you have the to option here, which basically signifies the destinations. In this case, this destination is the private resource. I can select that as well. So let me just go ahead and show it to you. If I go ahead and click on the from side first, you have the select sources and enter manually. The select sources option has 80 groups, which are 15. If you don't know how I got it here, if you don't know how I got the 80 groups and 80 users, then go ahead and watch the second video of the series about user provisioning, where you'll see how I provisioned these users. So 80 users are 11. That's pretty much it. And then you have on the right hand side, you have the private resources. If I expand that, you'll see Cafe Kashmir. I have the option of selecting multiple private resources in this case, right? And if I scroll down further, you'll find endpoint requirements. I've not changed anything. What you see here, for example, profile none, requirements none, private resource Cafe Kashmir. I've not done any change in there. And then you have the user authentication requirements, which is basically disabled. So we just go ahead and click on next after that to go ahead and configure the security. So let me just go ahead and click on next. All right. All right, so the configuration to specify access is complete. Now we're at configuring the security. We have the option of IPS right here, but that is disabled, and this is where we enable it. And it also mentions right here that the IPS profile is disabled for global settings. This is something that you see on the access rules page where you saw all the three rules, right? You have an option for configuring the global security settings from there. So yeah, and then you have the tenant control profile. It's obviously not applicable because this rule is for accessing a private application, and therefore this does not apply to it. So we're pretty much done with the configuration. And let me just go ahead and click on cancel, and this is how you basically go ahead and configure it. So this is the page we land on, and the global config, as I had mentioned, you can configure it from here, rule defaults and global settings. I'll show it to you in a separate video because this video is already longer than expected, so I'll just do it in a separate video. So here we are at the client machine, and I've installed the Cisco Secure client. You can ignore this for now. What we're interested in is the Zero Trust Access, and we're going to go ahead and enroll. But before that, let me quickly show you what are the options we see under this settings button. If I go ahead and click on the settings button, you find that the third option here is Zero Trust Access. If I click on that, you'll find that we have three tabs in here: the Advanced tab, the Config, and the Message History. And then we have this button right here, the Diagnostics, from where we collect the Dart bundle. So from Advanced, this very first tab, if we want to go ahead and unenroll, we can do it from here. If we go to the second tab now, for example, we can manually sync the config, like trigger it by clicking on this button. And then we have the message history from where we get the events as an example. Like for example, initializing, please wait. So whatever events you know are happening, you'll see those events right here. Like posture checking, when you click on enroll and so on. You'll see all the things in here. So once we go for enrollment, if you come back to this tab, you'll find more details of the events that have taken place with the time and that are taking place and so on. So I can clear this as well if I want. So if I click on clear, you'll find the message history is gone, right? So let me just go ahead and click on enroll now. All right, click on enroll. Okay, Cisco Secure Client, Zero Trust Access. It's going to ask me for my username, my email address. Okay, so the email address, let me just put that in. All right. Okay, so I've entered my email address. I click on continue. And let me remove this right here. Yep. Okay, redirecting to your SSO, blah, blah, blah. Do not redirect it. It didn't ask me for my password because I've already entered it. And this is not the first time I'm trying to log in. So enrolling, please wait. And there you go. It says Zero Trust Access. Congratulations, you successfully enrolled and blah, blah, blah. So let me just go ahead and open up the secure client now. All right, now we see that the Zero Trust Access, it is active. As you can see, let me just get the marker. So right here, and you see this green sign here that, we're good for now. And if I go ahead and click on the settings section and go to Zero Trust Access, I have the option to unenroll now because, I'm enrolled, right? Before this, it was grayed out. And now if I go to configuration, I can go ahead and click on sync now. However, it just got synced right now as soon as I enrolled. So how do I confirm if I got the correct config? I'm going to show that to you. After this, in message history, it gives me all the events information. Registration is required, blah, blah, blah. Enrolling, enrollment complete, Zero Trust access is active. And then I unenrolled and registration is required, blah, blah, blah. Enrolling, enrollment complete, and Zero Trust access is active. That's it. All right, so the enrollment is done. Let me just show you two things on this client. One would be the config, and the second thing would be accessing that private resource. All right, to make sure that this client received the traffic steering rules from the cloud side, you have to go to this particular folder and then access this file. So it is under C, program data. Program data might be hidden, so you might have to unhide it and so on, and then access that Cisco Secure Client, ZTA enrollment, then cached underscore configs, and then access this file. And you should see the traffic steering rules in this file. All right, let me just go ahead and try to access the private application now. cafe.tnw.com. Okay, hit enter. And there you go. Essence Cafe, your daily energy booster. Yep, that's my private application. I was able to reach it without any problems. So yeah, let's just go ahead and try Clientless now. So here we are back at the dashboard. So we'll go to resources and then private resources, click on that. And this is the page you land on. The second private resource is what we're interested in, Cafe Kashmir C less. On the right-hand side, we see these three dots. We click on that and then click on Edit. So the first thing that comes up is the private resource name, Cafe Kashmir C less. The description is optional, and then we have the internally reachable address, cafe.tnw.com, and we are using internal DNS server to resolve the domain. This is my internal DNS server. So let me just scroll down a little bit. All right, so here we have Zero Trust connections enabled. This checkbox is checked, but we're not using client-based connection. We are using browser-based connection, which means allow browser-based connections from endpoints that do not have the Cisco Secure Client, that software installed. Right, and this is the public URL that we're going to use to go ahead and connect to our private resource. You cannot change it from HTTPS because that's what it connects on. However, you need to make sure if your private resource is HTTP based, then you have to select HTTP here. Even though you do not mention anything in here, you have to select the appropriate option here. Has to be HTTP if it is HTTP, has to be HTTPS if you're using HTTPS. And that's pretty much it. Go ahead and click on save, I'll click on cancel. You can go ahead and click on save accordingly. And yeah, let's go ahead and check out the access rule now. So if I go to secure on the left-hand side, click on access policy. So I just deleted that access policy for clientless. I'm going to go ahead and create a new one. So let's go ahead and create a new one. All right, add rule, private access. All right, the rule is enabled at the top left, as we can see. Logging is enabled. That's good. So I'm going to say Cafe Kashmir C less is the rule name. The rule order is going to be 2, right? Let's keep it at number 2, and that's pretty much it. I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to say allow any to this particular destination, private resources to in this case. I'm going to select Cafe Kashmir C less. That's it. And do I need to enable anything else for now? I'm not really interested in doing that. Everything looks good. I don't need IPS. Everything looks good here as well. So I click on save. I should be able to see it now again in the same way I saw it before. That's pretty much it, right? Okay, let's grab that public URL and because that's the one we're going to use to go ahead and access the application. So here I can click on edit or I can just click on Cafe Kashmir CLS and I'll get the details on the right hand side. And if I scroll down a little bit, it's going to show me that URL. I can just, this external URL that you see right here, I can go ahead and click on this button. So it says copied, we're good. I'm going to go ahead and close it. So let's go back to the end user where we're going to try to access this application using the URL that we just copied. All right, so I've entered that same URL. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter now. And let's see. Okay, so we should be there soon. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and mention the email address now. Okay, done with that. I'm going to go ahead and click on next. I'm going to go ahead and enter the password now. So let me just go ahead and do that. Should be good. Click on sign in and yes, stay signed in. No problem. Let's see. There you go. Awesome. We are at the same um, resource again. As you can see, Sans Cafe. We're looking good. So we were able to access the private resource using client-based as well as client-less. I wanted to cover a couple more things in this video, but I think it's already way, way, way longer than expected. So I'm going to cover those things in a separate video. For now, this should be sufficient. In this video, we were able to cover the configuration, the demo, inside out for the access to private applications, as well as we checked what configurations are required for building up the tunnel between the Cisco Secure Access and your ASA in this case. Yep. So thank you so much. If you have any questions, please put it down in the comment section. Kindly support the channel by subscribing, liking the video, and sharing it with others. Thank you so much, guys. Have a great day ahead. Goodbye.